Well, today was Trump's first full day in office. Yep, Trump is back. He's now headline news 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as opposed to the last 4 years when he was also headline news 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
As opposed to mental illness is a terrible thing, isn't it? It's really sad. When did they all catch the same disease? Might have been at a monkeypox party, maybe crawling over one another, groping, you know. Now, President Trump has suggested that if Mexico and Canada don't start playing nice, that he might have to impose sanctions. Sanctions. You may recall that then Senator Marco Rubio's confirmation hearing to become our Secretary of State, our chief diplomat. We probably won't attack as many countries as we did when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, I'm guessing. But now we've got President Trump. Marco Rubio, a couple of days ago, after skating through and having a 99-0 vote in the Senate for his confirmation. It's good to be a senator when you're up for a vote in the Senate and to be someone who's liked as well and respected. But Marco Rubio, I've been talking about this forever because the Biden administration and their Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, who's a crook, who started that felonious 51 letter that tampered with our presidential election in 2020 like we're some third world B-poll country. But never mind that. Marco Rubio was talking about the war in Ukraine. President Trump has been talking about bringing an end to the war in Ukraine. And our chief, now, Hillary's not talking about that. Antony Blinken's not talking about that. Joe Biden is not talking about bringing an end to the war in Ukraine. Kamala Harris not talking about bringing an end to the war in Ukraine. None of the Democrats, they're just sucking up the money from the military-industrial complex and their pals, you know. It's almost as bad as their Green New Deal money suck up. Honestly, they're all worse than Al Sharpton. But here's Marco Rubio, day before yesterday, on the war in Ukraine.
It's going to be the official policy of the United States that the war in Ukraine needs to come to an end. It is a stalemate. It's a war and it's a conflict that was started by Russia. But it is now a stalemate, a protracted, bloody conflict, been incredibly destructive. I would argue for both Russia and Ukraine, but Ukraine is paying the biggest price of all. To its energy infrastructure, to the people and lives that have lost, to the millions of Ukrainians that have had to leave their countries and are living overseas. The conflict needs to end.
We're looking at about 1 million people that have been killed in this war that didn't exist when Trump was in the White House. Came along the war in Europe, Ukraine, Russia. Putin is a communist, and 1 million dead to a communist is what they call a good start. They call a good start. The Chinese, the Wuhan, they let loose. According to the official stats, I think the Wuhan is credited or blamed with killing 7 million to 8 million people worldwide, including about 1 million people in the United States. But the war in Ukraine, Putin, communists kill and they steal and they destroy. It's what communists do. But now President Trump talking about ending the war in Ukraine. Democrats don't care to end the war in Ukraine. Why is that? Isn't that peculiar? If you're a Democrat voter, explain to me why you and your party love war so much. Massive death counts. What's with that? But here is a headline this morning. Trump, because yesterday all the headlines are Trump threatening sanctions on Canada and Mexico. He's negotiating. But here's the headline today. Trump threatens sanctions on Russia and Putin if Russia refuses talks on ending war. Talking about ending the war. But what is that? But where's Joe Biden on ending the war? I guess Joe Biden took Air Force One to California the other day. Did you see that? He ended up in California at the end of the day. I thought he was just going to Delaware when I saw Air Force One fly down the mall, leaving Andrews. But never mind that. So Trump threatens sanctions if Russia refuses talks on ending war, calls Putin smart. They put the word smart in quotation marks because, you know, that's how that goes. U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday said that he will likely impose new sanctions against Russia if Vladimir Putin doesn't agree to enter negotiations on ending the war in Ukraine, the Reuters news agency reported. He did not specify what kind of sanctions he was referring to. We're talking to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. We're going to be talking with President Putin very soon, Trump reportedly said. The newly inaugurated president also said that Russia never would have gone into Ukraine, he said, if he had been president instead of Joe Biden, and there's a good deal of reason to believe that that's entirely true. He said, I had a very strong understanding with Putin that would have never, ever happened. He disrespected Biden. Very simple. He disrespects people. He's smart. He understands. He disrespected Biden. And so the headline just puts the word smart in quotation marks, says, oh, Trump calls Putin smart because Russian collusion, they're still doing that somewhere in the background of their demented brains. Aren't they amazing? Trump added that his administration is currently looking at sending weapons to Ukraine, but said the European Union should be doing more to support Ukraine. And that's 100% true, entirely true. Now, with that said, let me get to the mailbag. Let me get to the mailbag today. I have but 4 questions in the mailbag today, provided to me by my vast, ever-expanding staff. That is Michael Piercy, me and Michael Piercy do the show, and Kevin Tober. Kevin Tober works on the mailbag and social media questions, and Kevin is great. And he's not quite full time here on this. When I say not quite, but let me get to the mailbag questions. We have 2.5 of us doing the 3-hour show every day. If we were NPR, we'd have 33 people, including a sushi chef, because that's other people's money. All right, let's get to the mailbag. Now, Land of Foz, is that what it is? Land of Foz mom. Hi, Mr. Plant. My question is, I know that President Trump has pardoned the J6ers, the January 6ers, but what about the older women who were praying outside the abortion clinics who were arrested and locked up? What about them? That is a great question. It genuinely is a great question. And we should keep these people in mind. They're rotting in prison because they prayed outside of abortion clinics, and the Democrats would nail Jesus to a piece of wood this afternoon if they could get their hands on him. They're anti-God, anti-religion. They're so pro-death. It's like the old Al-Qaeda slogan, we love death more than you love life. And the Al-Qaeda might have to sue the Democrats because I think they've taken their slogan. Now, I went to justice.gov /OPR/PR/final defendant sentenced. And this is from May 31st of 2024. Final defendant sentenced for federal conspiracy against rights and freedom of access to clinic entrances. The FACE Act. Ironic that they call it the FACE Act since they're ripping faces off with metal hooks. And the convictions related to 2020 D.C. clinic invasion and blockade. They call it an invasion. It's an insurrection. Now, Paulette Harlow, a 77-year-old grandmother, was sentenced to 24 months in prison following her conviction for federal conspiracy against rights and freedom of access at clinic entrances offenses in connection with the blockade of a D.C. area reproductive health clinic. That's an abortion clinic where they kill babies. October 22nd of 2020. Now, this woman, Paulette Harlow, a grandmother, was praying outside of an abortion clinic, and Joe Biden and the Democrats put her in prison for 2 years for praying at an abortion clinic. Previously, Lauren Handy was sentenced to 57 months in prison. John Hinshaw, sentenced to 21 months in prison. They were all praying at an abortion clinic. William Goodman, sentenced to 27 months in prison. Jonathan Darnell, sentenced to 34 months in prison. Herb Garrity, 27 months in prison. Gene Marshall, 24 months in prison. Joan Bell, 27 months in prison. Heather Idoni, sentenced to 24 months in prison. A 10th defendant, Jay Smith, was sentenced to prison following his guilty plea for violating the FACE Act. March 1st, 2023. 10 defendants have been held accountable. And they were praying in an abortion clinic. And I think President Trump should jump in and free these people from prison. They are political prisoners and religious prisoners. The death cult, that is the Democrat Party. Even the bishop of the Episcopal Church is a supporter of abortion. What about them? Lando Fa's mom says, and I think President Trump, I'm going to bring this to the attention of people close to President Trump today, really ought to, and make a national political fight out of it. Why not? Good idea. Mark H. asks, thank you, Lando Fa's mom. Mark H. asks, hey, Chris, I was wondering where was Al Gore at the inauguration? I saw him at the Jimmy Carter funeral. Right, and that's a good question. We tried to find him, and I think Al Gore may have not come in for the presidential inauguration. He was at the Jimmy Carter funeral at the National Cathedral, and he was looking corpulent, as always. And was Tipper there? He and Tipper, I think, broke up a long time ago, right? Because he needs his chakra released more often than Tipper was willing to play along with. I don't know where Al Gore was. He was probably off. Maybe he was in Florida bringing Arctic weather to them. P.S. If I was the Trumps, Michelle Obama would never be invited to anything again. Invitation should be Barack +1 from now on, and not the former First Lady. She's an angry old vicious thing. She's in Hawaii at one of their multi-million-dollar mansions. It's a good idea, Mark H., to not invite Michelle. She won't show up anyway. Maybe they should invite her to everything and make it very public just to watch her not show up. And if she did, she'd scowl her way through it. And Al Gore, he's fixing the weather. Chris Donovan says, since he's been pardoned for criminal prosecution, can those of us who lost loved ones to COVID create a class action suit to permanently bankrupt Anthony Fauci, seeing as how he got the research financed? It's true, Joe Biden pardoned him, so now no criminal culpability for Anthony Fauci. But civil liability, I don't think a pardon covers civil liability. And a class action suit against Anthony Fauci, I think, would be an excellent idea. The Democrats would do it in a heartbeat, and I think we should follow suit and do the same thing. Chris and Emily. Thank you, Chris Donovan. Now, Chris and Emily, with our final mailbag question of the day, do you think Trump will re-sign the Mexico City policy executive order to end the Biden administration's policy of funding abortions overseas with our tax dollars? That is a very interesting idea. The Mexico City policy, now for many, many years, the Hyde Amendment, we don't use tax dollars to fund abortions in the United States, and we don't, the Mexico City policy, we don't use American tax dollars to fund abortions overseas in other countries. Democrats will kill babies wherever they can find them, unless they're harp seals. They love harp seals. But the Mexico City policy, Joe Biden rescinded the Mexico City policy in January of 2021, as soon as he took office, marking the end of a 4-year period under President Trump, saw the greatest expansion of the Mexico City policy in our history. But Joe Biden lifted that so we could fund. It goes back to Ronald Reagan in 1984 policy saying we won't use tax dollars to fund abortions overseas. Joe Biden rescinded that. Donald Trump is going to have to rescind the Joe Biden policy to bring us back to normal, the status quo ante before Joe Biden. So we're not using our tax dollars, good Christian church-going people, using our tax dollars to fund abortions in third world beepholes, But the Democrats just don't like people. The left, they don't like people. And they're happy to snuff out human life wherever possible, even the bishop, honestly, and Joe Biden, who pretends to be a Catholic, right? And the Democrats, if they can fund abortion overseas with our tax dollars, they'll do it. President Trump has to rescind that. And you're right, the FACE Act, indeed. No sense of irony, these people. Got to free the grandmothers praying at abortion clinics that the Democrats have thrown in prisons. Are they in prison in Cuba? Or are they? Because this is the kind of stuff Cubans throw you in prison for, communists.
Sometimes I, too, am a Catholic.
Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. Again, J.D. Vance converted to Catholicism not so long ago. But listen to this, sent to me by a Catholic priest, friend of mine, an old friend, Catholic priest. In 1960, when the population of the United States was 180 million people, the Episcopal Church had 3.4 million adherents in the United States. That's 1.8% of the population of the country. Today, the population is 330 million people, so it's more than twice that in the United States. And the Episcopal Church now has 1.3 million followers rather than 3.4 million. And instead of having 1.8% of the population, now the Episcopal Church has 0.039% of the population. That is a relative decline of 79% in the Episcopal Church since 1960, 65 years ago. And with that, let's go to Adal, calling from Montgomery County, Maryland. Adal, oh gosh, I'm running out the clock on you, but you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Well, I just wanted to get a few points in. You got one of them in already. We went from 125 down to 71 churches in the Washington Diocese, thanks to this dumpster fire we call Bishop Buddy. When she visits our church once a year, we're not allowed to question her insanity because we're supposed to respect the purple robe. This woman is a nightmare. There's so much more I want to say, but I'm going to get upset. But she is despicable. And I'm going to try to get a movement going to have her repealed. But to answer your question, the churches send delegates to vote on who replaces her. That's how she got her job. And we're the only Orthodox church in the entire diocese. And the rest of them send gay representatives. And that's how people like her get her job.
I got to tell you, Adal, it is, you look at the numbers of what's happening to the Episcopal Church in the United States, from 1.8% of the population to 0.039%. Someone should wake up. By the way, today there is a bill in the United States Senate. Senate Bill 6, the 119th Congress. The Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. You may remember when Barack Obama was in the State House in Illinois, they had a similar bill that if an abortion was botched and everyone survived, that you would be required to not drown the baby in a tub. And Barack Obama voted present. I remember that. He voted present. Didn't want to be on the record one way or the other on that Born Alive thing. And now the Republicans are introducing the Born Alive Abortion Survivor Protection Act in this Congress, 2025. And the Democrats are fighting hard to kill that legislation, Senate Bill 6, S6. They're doing everything they can to kill the bill. Kill the bill. Now, it should also be noted that today, January 22nd, is the anniversary of Roe v. Wade being passed. In 1973, it was, what passed? It was a Supreme Court ruling. It didn't pass. I apologize for using the word passed. But the Supreme Court ruled on this date, January 22nd, 1973, in the Roe v. Wade case. I met Norma McCorvey and interviewed her, met her a couple of times and spoke to her. She was the woman at the center of the case. Jane Roe is a pseudonym like Jane Doe that was used by Norma McCorvey, who was the centerpiece of the case. And I met her. I interviewed her. Very nice lady, but never mind that. Also, this Friday is the March for Life in Washington, D.C., a big annual event. It's going to be real cold, I think. The March for Life. Today, when I was driving in, my dashboard told me it was 12 degrees Fahrenheit driving in this morning. It is brisk, a little chilly. So the Right to Life March, the March for Life, is this Friday in Washington, D.C. Ron DeSantis will be speaking at the D.C. Right to Life March, the March for Life. It's always a big, huge event. And what was the kid's name from? Nick Sandman, right, from Covington Catholic School in Covington, Kentucky. And he had that chief cheekbones. Remember all the Cherokee, they have high cheekbones. And that was at the March for Life because the nice kids from a Catholic school, Covington, Kentucky, were in Washington for the March for Life. And then the nice kid, teenager, Nick Sandman, he stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, and a crazy fake shaman or whatever, he's like the pro-death shaman, was banging a drum. And I think that Nick Sandman is rich now, isn't he? Didn't they sue CNN and win for all the slanderous stuff? CNN is not doing very well in the courts these days, are they? But my friend Tim makes a good point. Perhaps Trump is waiting for Friday and the March for Life to reinstate the Mexico City policy, right? And Friday would be a good day to reinstate Mexico City policy, overturning Joe Biden and funding abortions everywhere we can find them in the world, which the Democrats love. And also to free, pardon, commute the sentences of the women and the men that were protesting at an abortion clinic in Washington, D.C., and given years and years in prison for praying outside of an abortion clinic. And I remember one of the stories was the Democrats were really upset because they said that, no women get late-term abortions, right, in a third trimester and all that. But one of the women showing up at the abortion clinic while these Christians were protesting and praying, one of the women showing up complained that she was in labor when she arrived at the abortion clinic. I'm like, well, that's a pretty late term thing, I got to say. Amazing stuff. And today being the anniversary, January 22nd, 1973, of the Roe v. Wade decision from the Supreme Court. And it was overturned, 3 years ago now? And is that when it was? I'd have to go look. But 2023, more than 1 million abortions in the United States, greatest number in 12 years, in at least 12 years, the greatest number of abortions after Roe v. Wade was overturned, right? So it was Roe v. Wade was overturned in 22. Okay, so that is, and they're like, oh no, we're not going to be able to have any more abortions. And then 2023 had I don't think I've seen the numbers for 2024, but 2023, more than 1 million abortions. And the Democrats, all right, more than 1 million. That is great. That is choice. But you can't choose what school you send your kids to, because that's not choice. Aren't they amazing? Your Democrat Party. Yes, sir. Yeah, and the bishop in Washington, she is a left-wing hero. She's on The View today. She was on CNN last night. She's on The View today. Ask her about her stance on abortion, because she's in favor of abortion, too. The bishop, she's the pro, like Joe Biden, the Catholic who's pro-abortion and yada, yada, and the bishop who's pro-abortion, Episcopal bishop. Isn't it amazing? So the bishop was on The View with the left-wing radicals there who are paid by ABC News. They're employees of ABC News.
Given your role it doesn't seem surprising that you would speak out for the marginalized, as anyone who's read the Bible and knows the path of Jesus. But do you think your
aliens.
message is being misconstrued and politicized?
You mean Venezuelan gang members?
Well, sure. Yeah.
Well, you politicized it.
I think if you read what I said, and
you politicized
how could it not be politicized, right? We're in a hyper-political climate. One of the things I caution about is the culture of contempt in which we live that immediately rushes to the worst possible interpretations of what people are saying and to put them in categories such as the ones you've just described. That's part of the air we breathe now. And I was trying to speak a truth that I felt needed to be said, but to do it in as respectful and kind a way as I could.
It was the inaugural prayer service the day after the inauguration of the president, and you went to political hot-button issues and of illegal aliens, an invasion of more than 10 million illegal aliens. Again, Ellis Island was open for 64 years, and 12 million people came legally through Ellis Island. Under Joe Biden, at least 10 million came illegally into the United States without being vetted as they were vetted at Ellis Island for diseases and for various other issues. But the open borders thing, and you politicized it, Bishop. I've never had such an urge to speak bluntly, you might even say disrespectfully, to an Episcopal bishop, but lady, you politicized it. You poisoned the well. You brought the politics. You polarized it. You did that, not President Trump. President Trump pointed out what you did, and he has a certain flair. These matter. In fact, speaking of a certain flair, let's go to this nitwit in the White House press corps yesterday. Number 16. NBC News has a fake reporter named Peter Alexander. And President Trump having event after event after event yesterday, and speeches and press conferences, and he wears down the press till they run out of questions. And this left-wing Democrat Party fanboy named Peter Alexander, and he was so rude and interrupting. Remember Joe Biden? They just sat there smiling at him. What kind of ice cream do you like? Oh, isn't your son Hunter great at knocking up strippers and disavowing paternity? And why isn't there a stocking for your granddaughter on the mantle where the rest of the nothing ever? But honestly, Peter Alexander interrupted President Trump again and again yesterday, to the point that President Trump had to speak up and say, what is your problem, boy? I'm paraphrasing. NBC fake reporter Peter Alexander, and, attacking, trying to create division. The media is back to being the filthy, corrupt Democrat Party shills that they are.
J.D. Vance, he said, this is a week ago, he said, if you committed violence on January 6th, obviously you should not be pardoned. Why is your vice president wrong?
Well, only for one reason. They've served years in jail. They should not have served, and they've served years in jail.
He's trying to respond.
And murderers don't even go to jail in this country.
Now, Peter Alexander, as soon as the president started responding, well, why is he wrong? Trying to drive a wedge, create a schism, division, pit the president and the vice president against each other. And as soon as President Trump begins responding to the question, which he was doing gladly, Alexander just keeps babbling like an insane person in a bus stop in Washington, D.C., with boxes of bundled up blankets next to him. He's like a crazy person, but it didn't stop there.
But these people have served years of jail, and their lives have been ruined. And in many cases, listen to me for a second. Stop interrupting. They've served years in jail, and if you look at the American public is tired of it. Take a look at the election. Just look at the numbers on the election. We won this election in a landslide because the American public is tired of people like you that are just one-sided, horrible people in terms of crime. You don't talk about all the people that have been killed and what happens to those murderers.
Honestly, and Peter Alexander just keeps talking. He just wants to. I know I've got, and President Trump is already saying, well, let me answer your question. And he begins speaking, and this fatuous fraud keeps on babbling. He just keeps on going and going. He doesn't shut up. And I've got to say, one more moment like that, and if I were the president, I'd say, I'm pulling his White House press pass. We've had enough of that. We're going to reinstitute civility in the White House briefing room, and you represent the opposite of civility and the opposite of journalism, and you are out, Peter Alexander. And then he'd become a hero. He'd get his own one-hour show, and they'd pay him $30 million a year. Well, they won't pay him 30 like Rachel Maddow because he's not a lesbian woman, but if he were, he could claim to be a lesbian woman. Might help with his negotiations. Isn't that amazing? Great stuff. And why are the January 6 people being released? Well, I got to say, the bishop was down at Lafayette Park the day after the riots forced the evacuation of the president from the White House and the torching of the Church of the Presidents. When all of those people, I don't know if the statute of limitations has expired because it was 2020. When was it? May and June that the Democrats were rioting down there for days, and they burned the only building in Lafayette Park. It went up in flames, and the news media told us that it was mostly peaceful. And sure, there are a couple of fires have been started. But none of those people were sentenced to prison. Isn't that fascinating? Enrique Tarrio of the Proud Boys, an African-American, Cuban-American, who was in Baltimore on January 6th, was sentenced to 22 years in prison. And one of his terrible crimes that he was accused of was he's a black guy, pulling down a Black Lives Matter flag or banner, made at a banner shop. And prison for that. And pray outside an abortion clinic. Years in prison for that. But attack the White House, torch the Church of the Presidents. Where's the pipe bomb guy from the DNC headquarters and the RNC headquarters? Where are those prison sentences? Where are those people? And with all the riots in D.C., show me the length of the prison sentences for those riots, those rioters, and show me the numbers of those rioters that have been sentenced to long prison sentences where 160 to 180 police were injured at the White House, and many more across the city and other riots, and all the looting. They looted businesses in this area in my neighborhood where I live, and nobody sentenced to a day in prison, much less a year, much less 22 years. Aren't they amazing? You're a Democrat Party. So I think it's good, and Peter Alexander should be gassed. All right, now let's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We got Alexandria. She posted a video. She's as dumb as a rock and getting dumber. The rocks might sue if I call her dumb as a rock again. The amazing stuff. They've got Elon Musk tapped his chest and raised his hand to the crowd and said, I give you my heart. I give you my heart. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is going the Hitler route.
You're going to do a Sig Heil? You're going to do a Hail Hitler?
Sig Heil.
Or their rebrand a Roman salute?
Rebrand.
From behind the presidential seal of the United States of America?
She's so respectful of.
It's on.
It's on.
It's on.
And she fired on Fort Sumter. She then detonated her suicide vest with a thumb detonator, and meat. AOC meat was all over the room. It was quite terrible. And what is that? Sig Heil? Sig Heil might be a guy she went to high school with in the suburbs.
What is so important for us to understand,
what is it?
Is that as long as we don't give up, it's not over. It's not over.
It's not over.
It is not over.
She has the brain of a 5-year-old. She honestly, she should be playing with blocks on the floor, not being a hero of the Democrats in the Congress of the United States. And then it's Sig Heil because Elon Musk waved at the crowd. Have you seen the collection of photos of Obama and Hillary and everybody waving at crowds doing the Sig Heil? This woman should be expelled from Congress for a low IQ.
Libs of TikTok started crying because because I said over the weekend that Donald Trump is a rapist, and they went on Twitter and they went, oh, boo-hoo-hoo. And I said, basically, F you, cry more. I don't give a shit. Like, you want to support a rapist? That's on you. That's on you. But I don't. And they wanted to call in all of these threats into my office and all this other stuff. I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn.
Yeah. I've met Juanita Broderick. I've met Paula Jones. I worked with Monica Lewinsky, but that's another discussion for another day. Jeffrey Epstein is a Democrat island. You guys, I don't think you know much about your party, AOC, or garbage disposals or ovens or how things work. She should be forced to sit down and watch that show, How Stuff Works. She's a member of the Congress of the United States of America and a Democrat in good standing.
You know, I ate when I was a waitress and a bartender, and I eat as a member of Congress. It's called a job.
You're going to do a Sig Heil? You're going to do a Hail Hitler?
Yes, every day is an IQ test, and every day AOC fails.
E-L-G-S-E-S, Eagles!
Yes, the Democrat mayor and Ivy League postgraduate degree recipient, mayor of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Can't spell Eagles. AOC doesn't know what Heil Hitler is. She grew up on another planet. The good people at the Babylon Bee satirical newspaper, and they are funny. They're funny people. You may have noticed that the former head of Planned Parenthood, Cecile Richards, whose mother was Governor Ann Richards of Texas from long ago. Cecile Richards sadly died the other day at the age of 67 from a nasty kind of cancer. And the Babylon Bee has a headline, because she was the head of Planned Parenthood, you know. The headline is, Clump of Cells dies at 67. Clump of Cells dies at, because that was the debate, wasn't it? A clump of cells became no longer viable earlier this week at the age of 67. The clump, which had been birthed by Democrat uterus owner and former Democrat Governor Ann Richards, was in its 205th trimester, 205 trimesters in at the age of 67. Presided over 333,000 terminations of unwanted, clumps of cells.